Hello and well met. This is Laren with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today we're going to build a Yuan-Ti spellcaster using the Fantasy Grounds Unity platform. We're going to be using the DnD5e Ruleset, and I have an array or collection of books that I have loaded in the library. So if you're new to Fantasy Grounds, you'll either have to have at least a standard license and some content, or you need to be connected to your host who may have books to share with you so you can create characters. So in the library, on the right-hand side, I'm going to open up my modules. And on the left here, you can see all of the books I have loaded. Monsters of the Multiverse has replaced a lot of the other books, so I don't really need the Turtle package or Elemental Evil or even Mordenkainen's or the... there's one other book that it replaces, but these are Volo's Guide. That's the other one. So all of these are basically used to create characters. These are all the player modules. Some of these just provide backgrounds and such, but others provide subclasses or races and such. So I'll go ahead and close that. But I do have the player's handbook loaded as the main book. So now that I have that, if you open up the character selection under play and you bring this up and click on Character Wizard, that will bring up the newer Fantasy Grounds rule set for DnD5e, the Character Wizard. I'm going to just go ahead and title this Yuan-Ti because I don't really know what exactly I'm going to build. I'm going to use the standard array, but you have an option to roll. You can manually enter, or you can do the point buy system. Maybe I'll do point buy. So with point buy, everything starts off at 8. You increase these numbers, and as you do so, it automatically deducts from your point system here. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up to at least a 14 on the charisma, because I'm going to use this spellcaster to basically be a charisma-based character. In the new player options, you can choose intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. So in this case, I am going to go with charisma because Yuan-Ti traditionally have a higher charisma, but with the new Tasha's way of building things, you don't necessarily have to fall under that trope. So I'm going to go ahead and add some more points in here. So I got a 13 Dex, 11 Con, which I'm going to bring up to 12. Intelligence, I'm going to bring that up to probably up to 13, 14. And then the last point in charisma. It looks like I got too many. So I'll bring con down by 1. So the point buy is at 0 now. So I have a 9 strength, 13 dex, 11 con, 14 intelligence, 10 wisdom, 15 charisma. So once you're satisfied with that, you'll notice that this will have a green check. It already is satisfied when you first start because you already have the base of the standard array. So I'm going to click on race. So this is where things are a little bit different with the Monsters of the Multiverse. So this screen will look the same, but half the races, I would say, are in the Monsters of the Multiverse now, except for the core ones, and those aren't due to change until 2024. But I'm going to go ahead and click on the Yuan-Ti, and if you mouse over, you'll see which books these come from. So the Satyr is in here too, so you don't need the Theros book. Shatterkai come from Monsters of the Multiverse. So a lot of the variations will start coming over as a sub-race instead of just using elf and then picking the half-elf or whatever, drow or whatever. So that will change eventually. But I'm going to go ahead and click on Yuan-Ti. And you have two choices here. You can do the... you can increase by 2 and the other by 1, or you can increase 3 different ones by 1. So I'm going to go with option choice 1. And what that does is it sets up 2 different windows here to pick which modifiers you want. So in the select languages area, I'm going to go ahead and pick Draconic because they already have common. And then I'm going to pick Charisma as my +2 modifier. And then my +1 modifier, I'm going to pick that, either Dex or Con. Probably go with Dexterity. So that satisfies the racial requirements. And you get creature type, magic resistance, poison resilience, and Serpentine spellcasting. So Yuan-Ti no longer get immunity from poison. So that's something that they lost during the changes that are put out. And then their magic has changed a little bit. So we're going to go to the class area. And this is where I'm going to pick. So I want to pick some kind of wizard. So I'll go with a sorcerer. For the sorcerer skill proficiencies, I'm going to go with Arcana and maybe Persuasion. That seems to be pretty mindful. And then the sorcerer specialization, I'm going to go with Draconic Bloodline. Kind of goes thematically with the build I'm making. And then I'm going to go to backgrounds. So once you go to the backgrounds, you'll get the choice here. I'm going to go with a spy. So with a spy, you're going to get persuasion, or you get deception and stealth, which is kind of cool. And then I'm going to pick up the 3 dragon anti-card set for this particular build. So this character can do some gambling or some entertainment. And then the inventory button will now show up at this time. So I'm going to click on inventory. If you forget to do this at level 1, this won't come back up. You'll have to manually go in. But I'm going to go ahead and pick the, go with the Dungeoneers pack. And for my first class choice of a weapon, I think I'm going to go with a quarterstaff. And then I get an arcane focus, but you get 2 daggers with this build. So I'm going to go with a crystal as an arcane focus. So that is the main things for inventory. You can purchase equipment. If you don't like your choices, you can click reset. But like I said, after first level, after you save it, this option doesn't come up again. So I'm going to go to spells. I'm going to pick my cantrips for right now. So I get 4. So I want to go ahead and do maybe friends, because I think that's something that this build would want. Infestation. I thought that was interesting. Mage Hand, and let's see, what's the other one? I think I'll go with, let's go with Blade Ward. So you got some utility spells here, mostly. Blade Ward, Friends, Infestation, and Mage Hand. So there's one kind of offensive one defensive one, and then like 2 utility ones. So that's pretty cool. And now for level 1, I'm going to click on the level 1 button. I get up to 2 of them, so I think I'm going to go with Charm Person and potentially Mage Armor, something like that to help, or Witch Bolt. Actually, I want to get rid of, I don't want Charm Person. So I'm going to go with 1 offensive spell. So I can delete that choice I made. I'll just go with Witch Bolt. And I'll go with something more useful like Mage Armor. So there we go. So those are the 2 spells that we have for that level. And once you've chose those, it adds it to your character. And now I'm going to go to feats. In this case, there's no feats that we qualify for, so that'll just turn into a check mark. So now that we have everything satisfied, you can go back and look through your character to make sure you like your build. Over on the right is your preview of your choices. And you just go down this list and make sure you got everything selected that you want. And if you accidentally double up on your skills or something, the wizard generally puts a red mark or an X here to let you know you have to go back and add or change something. But that's pretty much it. So I'm done with the spells, the feats. I'm going to go ahead and click on commit. And once that happens, this will bring up the character. Now, I don't like this particular portrait, but if you have a token, your DM can bring that up for you and drag it to your sheet. On the left here is your portrait. So if you open this up, you can actually, as a player, you can select not your token, but your portrait. Your token has to be assigned by the DM, or your portrait becomes your default token. So if I go into here and I go to, let's say, go to the Fantasy Grounds Fantasy folder, which has a bunch of pre-made portraits. And then if you use Monsters of the Multiverse, that also has a bunch of new ones in there. I should have probably looked at that one, but I'm more familiar with the Fantasy Grounds one. So It's going to go in there and pick something like a lizard man or something to kind of depict a Yuan-Ti race. But as you can see, this is probably the most time-consuming part of this, is to pick the actual race. Oh, here's a kind of like a female Gorgon. Let's see what we got here. So you can choose, however you want to do this. Maybe your Yuan-Ti is kind of hidden. They don't have a. I'll just use this ninja character as my Yuan-Ti spy sorcerer. So he might have like a snake tongue or something, but you can't tell he's a reptile or part reptile. So that's that. If you want to level up when it comes time to it, you want to make sure the books that you're going to be using are loaded or activated. And then if you go into the class or level area, just click on this magnifying glass that's next to the proficiency bonus. Click on level up, and that will bring up the character wizard. At this point, all you would do is click the up arrow, which takes you to level 2. It adds whatever class features that need to be added at this point. The feats will come up again to check to see if you got any feats. In this case, we don't. You want to go to the spells, so you might have another spell slot to choose from. So I'm going to go back to my level 1 and take a look. So I get one more. So I had Witch Bolt and I had Mage Armor. I'm going to go with Grease. That's one of my favorite spells. And then I'm going to go ahead and commit after I've changed those, and that saves the character again. So that's the process of basically going through and building a character. It's pretty simple. I mean, it's not too hard. Now, there are some things you might have to do after the fact. So if I'm going to go to my Actions tab, these are my spells that I get for this build. So for like the quarterstaff, I'm going to be using that primarily two-handed. I have 2 daggers, so I'm going to put 2 here for my ammo in case I throw them. And then if there's any special abilities or anything that you want to add there, you can actually go to your abilities tab and you can look at your other things. So you have this dragon ancestor. So you can pick the type of dragon that this particular guy was or girl was based off of. So I might go with the black dragon. So I would put a notation here. And maybe some of your features, your actual features are like that. Draconic Resilience. You get your hit point maximum increases by 1. It increases by 1 again whenever you gain a level in this class. So that resilience is already built into Fantasy Grounds. We don't have to do that. But when you aren't covered and you have like these real light, thin scales, your AC is 13 plus your modifier bonus. So I'm not sure what happened here, but it didn't calculate that. But basically, this should be, the base should be 13. So your dex bonus is already here. So the base should actually be 13. So I'm just going to put, there's a miscellaneous adjustment there. So that should be that. So it would be a 3, not a 13. So that's your 15 would be your armor class in this case. And then when you go down to the, let's see, so dragon, you would get acid breath basically for that, for your draconic heritage. And then let's see, what else do we have? So yeah, draconic resilience is level 1. So what I would do from this character is go into edit the data in the back here on the Actions tab. Click on the star, and that will give you a blank. I'm just going to put racial abilities or something like that, so I have an idea of what this stuff is. And then the draconic thing is also part of your magic, so you might want to put that in a separate area. So the draconic bloodline for a black dragon in this case is going to give you some of these features. So this might not be part of your racial stuff, but you need a new section or another group, in other words, to keep the stuff organized. And then I'll have a magic section for the sorcery. So that is some customization that you might employ when you're building a character. And at this point, I might take my draconic resilience, which comes from, let's see, that's your features. So that probably comes from your your Draconic Bloodline, which is part of your casting abilities. So I would put that in my sorcery part, because that's what it's basically more part of. And then that way you can kind of keep track of what it is that you're getting from where. Let's see. So that's racial ability. And then you go down to your abilities. So you got your Draconic Ancestor. We already chose Black Dragon. So we're going to put that, notate that here, because that determines your breath weapon, if applicable. So I just put a little notation there for my GM. So then you got the Font of Magic, which is your sorcery points. So this goes under your sorcery. So I want to put that under the sorcery area. So I'm going to drag and drop that there. And then copy and paste the category and put it in the correct location. Because this gives you an explanation of how sorcery works and such, so it's nice to have that here, so you don't have to go back to this other abilities tab every time. Creature type says we're humanoid. Criminal contact has to do with our background. Magic resistance is an advantage against saving throws against spells, so I would put that in the this is the racial modifier. So we'll just put that there as a notation. We can actually code that somewhat, so we'll do that later. So I'm just kind of going down all the features that this character has and kind of notating it or putting them on there. So there's the poison resilience, which is similar to like what the dwarf has now instead of immunity. So I'll go ahead and drag and drop that into the racial abilities. So that's going to go there. And then what else do we have in ability? So Serpentine spellcasting. So that's something I wanted to go over. So it says that intelligence, wisdom, or charisma is your spellcasting ability for these spells when you cast them with this trait. You choose this when you select the race. I chose charisma based, so it kind of line up with the rest of my spells. But that would go under your racial abilities too. So there's your Serpentine casting. So whenever you have a secondary casting ability, especially if it's different from your base, you want to change the metadata in the racial area. So when you go click on the magnifying glass next to the header for this racial ability section that I created, right now it doesn't have anything assigned. So I'm going to go ahead and add charisma to this so that it will pick that up. And then any of the spells I get, so it says you can, the poison cantrip, you can cast animal friendship an unlimited number of times with this trait. You can only target snakes with it. So that will go in here. So if I open up the character area and go to spells, I'm just going to search for animal friendship. And then I'll put a note on there that it's snake. So here's the spell. So I'll drag and drop that into my this is actually with sorcery, or no, this is a racial ability. And then once I've done that, I'll just leave that as it is. I'm not going to put any sort of limitation on it. And then the others, though, at third level, when you turn third level, you can cast with this trait. Once you cast it, you can't do so until you finish a long rest. You can also cast it using any of your open spell slots of second level or higher. So if you had any spell slots, you could use those to power these additional abilities. So intelligence and wisdom and charisma is your choices there, but you can't switch between them. You have to pick one at the beginning of your build. So if I had any more spells, I would put them in this racial category. And if they were based on intelligence, I would go ahead and assign this to be intelligence instead of charisma. But I went ahead and picked charisma. It's a lot easier to remember. It's already part of the build, so didn't change too much there. So that pretty much takes care of most of that. But when you have a Draconic Bloodline, you get a breath weapon. So you might have to set that up. So there's some acid. It says you can read, write, and speak Draconic. Additionally, when you make a charisma check, when interacting with dragons, your proficiency bonus is doubled if it applies to the check. So I already have a free language from that, so I can pick another language because I didn't have to pick Draconic, so I already get it for free. So I'm going to go ahead and pick, I'm going to go with, I'll go with Elvish, I guess. And then for the breath weapon, I'm going to set that up as a racial ability. So if I click on the, I'm going to add a power, or in this case, I'll just add one in this group already. So if I click the green plus button, it just creates a blank. I'm going to call this breath weapon, and it's going to be acid. So in parentheses, I will put acid so I remember. And then it tells you roughly, like, what it's going to do for damage. So when you go to your bloodline or your ancestor, you're going to get the more information on how this works. So if you get a breath weapon of any sort, you would set it up that way, and then you get to choose the type of dragon. So the damage is associated with that feature. So it might be a 15-foot cone. So whatever it is, you need to put that on your list here. So let's see. So where would that be? The breath weapon. Yep. All right. So that's just sort of the things that you'd want to do when you're setting up your character. Like, these are little things that would help you in play. You don't have to do this. It can be handled manually. So like, if you wanted to use your dragon ancestor, you can just basically drag this over to the chat window and the DM can handle it. But generally, DMs want to have this stuff done ahead of time. So if this was truly a breath weapon, maybe it's 15-foot cone. You'd put a notation on there, and then maybe put a cone or something like that, or a stream in this case. So it might be a line. Depends on the type of breath weapon it is. And then you would right-click on it, and you can add an action. So this would be basically a ranged attack. So I'm going to put in a cast feature, and then I'm going to put in the particulars. So damage, is it half on success or whatever? You're not sure, but if you were going to, you put that there. And then your attack roll would be based off of this is a ranged attack, so that would change that. And then if there is a save, it would be like half on damage. And then if it was for the type, it could be changed there, but I'm going to leave that. And it's not considered magic, so I'll leave that. So that could be the attack roll, and then you would go ahead and designate the damage. So I'm going to add another line, which is actually the damage itself. And then you would just click this, and you would add the applicable dice. So maybe it's a D8, maybe it's 2D8 plus 2 or something for your. Maybe it goes up in level. It's hard to say if you're making these up as you go, kind of thing. But here's the acid damage. So if you're going to use this cast ability, and that was your weapon, you'd have those. So if you change the group down here to preparation, maybe you can only use this once per day. And then for the combat and actions, for when you're actually going to be using this. So this is just a way for you to kind of automate some of the things that you might have on your character sheet. But nonetheless, that's just some of the things have changed. So it could be that the breath weapon is going to be different or modified. So you need to look up your race when you're actually creating your character to see what it has. So if I go up to Yuan-Ti, and then I come down here and look at all these traits, that's something that you need to pay attention to when you're building your character. But in this case, it actually has to do with the sorcery. So if I open up the sorcerer, which is this button here, and you come down to the types of sorcery there are, you can check to see what it does for you and what types of things you get. Because sorcery points are another thing. Like for your level, you'd probably get a couple sorcery points. So I might open this up and change this group here, or make another group for another type of thing I want to track. Maybe I want to track my torches or food. So there's all kinds of customization you can do here. I don't want to get too far off in the weeds, but I just wanted to show you that there are ways that you can add more detail to your character if needed. So anyways, that's the build. It was not very long. I think I spent more time explaining how to add custom actions than actually building the character. So hopefully that helps a little bit. You take care, everyone. Have a good weekend.